Hi, and welcome to day 4 of 13 days of Vlogmas, aka 13 days of Josh. Appreciate if you came back again for day 4. Today I'm going to be doing a series update, meaning I'm going to be giving you a wrap up of all the series I read this year, which ones I'm DNFing, which ones I'm continuing, and then at the end I'll give you my top 5 series to either start and or continue in 2023 that I did not read this year. There's always a constant growing library of series that I need to finish that I have yet to get to. So let's start with the 3 series that I actually finished this year. That would be The Button Box by Stephen King. I think I didn't know it was a series for the longest time. Then I learned that it was getting made into one. When they finally said the 3rd and final one was coming out, I figured why not read it. I loved the first book of the series. It is effectively classic Stephen King fantasy paranormal about this box being given to this young girl by this demonic, almost Satan-like man who is trying to tempt her into doing bad things. I really liked that book. I felt like it was Stephen King at his best. Then we get to book 2, and Stephen King's no longer attached. It's now the second co-author writing the entire story, and it goes in a direction that is, I think, more hopeful. And as someone who loves the dark side of King, I was not here for it. And then in the final book, King returned to the series to write the last one himself, and I think it was better than book 2, but it still stuck with the basic premise of the goal of the box, rather of the demon-like man giving this box to this young girl who is now an adult, is for the greater good. I just feel like it undercut the effectiveness of that first book. So as a whole, I would say read the first book. It's really good, I think. As a series, I think it's a pass. The next one I read was The Poppy War. This is one where I reread the first one so I could finish the rest in the series. This was for The Poppy War read-along done by Erica for the Broken Spine. Honestly, it feels so long ago that we did that, but it was this year. I loved this series. I talk about it with them extensively in Erica's live shows. That was so much fun, honestly. The first book, honestly, I think I loved it more in the second go around. And the second book, when I finally got to it, was really good. The third book was, in my opinion, a disappointment. Why was it a disappointment? Honestly, I don't remember. I think it seemed anticlimactic. That's what it was. The details have left me a bit, but all in all, it was not my favorite. And then finally, I read the Texkalon duology by Arcadia Martine, I believe is her name. And I did a full review of this entire series that I'll try to link to. I think it's a solid series. I had to reread book 1 to be able to follow along because I was kind of lost. I'm not used to this sort of epic sci-fi space opera. I struggled the first go around. But what I will say is that once I reread it and sort of got more immersed into world building, once I understood what was happening, I really honestly got really invested in this world and what was going on. And I thought it was really rich in world building and the themes it was exploring as far as different communities trying to build and have ambassadors basically maintain civility across different countries effectively, while also simultaneously dealing with threats outside of this sort of union. And I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good series. One that I think was worth the effort it took to sort of get myself following along with what was going on. Was it the best series? Oh, I did not prepare for that question, so I'm not going to answer it. But it's between Poppy War and Texkalon. Let's talk about now the series that I'm not going to continue that I've read this year. First one is Zachary Ying in the Dragon Republic. This one was fine. It was, I don't know the right word, because it's a middle grade book, so to call it immature feels unfair. But I don't read a lot of middle grades, so I don't know how to judge this in the context of its genre, of its target audience. But for me, it just something about it that didn't quite feel entirely realized in the world. Nevertheless, the attempts what were going on were intriguing, and the way it looks at growth and I guess how we judge people on the outside versus how they can evolve with time. I feel like it did a really good job of assessing and sort of challenging our assumptions of, I guess, the fact that people don't change. I guess that is possible. They can change with enough time and enough opportunity to learn, I suppose. Then Blade Runner. This one was honestly a lot of fun. I really like this book, but I don't think I'm invested enough in the world, despite really loving the book, to continue this series. I haven't heard much about it in the ethos of, I guess, the sci-fi community, and outside of the actual movie, it's just, I've only ever heard the first book being talked about. So unless I hear otherwise, I'm not going to continue the series. I'm not interested enough. Now, next up, there's one series that I would continue, but I'm not sure if it actually is continuing. That is The Alchemical Journeys. I read book 2, that is to say the sequel to Middle Game, which was Seasonal Fears. This one was something I would read again in the same way that there are some shows I watch despite they're going way downhill, and that's because I'm invested in the world. But realistically, this is subpar in every aspect to Middle Game, and it should not have been made. But if the world was to be continued, I would give my money to it for sure. Is that a bad idea? I don't know. Watch my review of that. Now, series that I reread, it was only one full series that I reread. And technically, there were several that I reread the first stuff, like The Button Box, Poppy War, Texcalon. Honestly, it seems like every series that I finished, I reread the first book first. There was a lot of rereads, but the entire series of Earthseed was the one that I read in its entirety, and that was for the Octavia Slow Read. This was just barely a reread because I read the second book for the first time, I believe, last December. So when I read it the second time this year, it was a reread, technically. But I thoroughly enjoy this. This is probably one of my favorite series and books of all time. I absolutely adore the world building and the ideas that are explored, both politically, I guess, but also on a spiritual level, the way we talk about Earthseed through religion and God has changed. It's something I've talked about extensively on my channel. I'll try to link to some videos where I talk about that. And I still need to do a full series review, honestly, because this is such a rich conversation that we had here about Earthseed and how we can honestly, genuinely use it in real life to how we guide ourselves in our life choices. Then finally, series that I'm going to be continuing, ranging from least likely to get to right away versus most likely to jump on as soon as I can. And this is where most of the books that I've been reading, most series I read this last year, are going to be categorized. There's like a lot. So let's go through them quickly. Newsflash. This is a zombie series by Mira Grant, aka Shauna McGuire. The first book was YA. It was monstrous fun. See my horror ranking for that. While it was fun and I guess an interesting look at a zombie apocalypse, it wasn't anything too special, but enough for me to want to stay invested, I guess. Next up, Nemesis, which is a trilogy, apparently, with the second book already out, about a trans teen who becomes basically Superman. It's about her dealing with the traditional idea of becoming a superhero, but with her trans identity sort of being explored, intersecting with the experience of being a superhero. And I was thoroughly surprised when I read this YA superhero drama at how much I was seriously invested in the story. So this is one I do want to continue. I still, as much as I enjoyed it, I'm not sure how quickly I'll pick it up just because it's still YA and it's not something I'm the most excited for. Next up, African Immortals. I read book 2 of this vampire series by Tanner Dew, and while I do intend to continue it, this one, between the last one and this one, was probably over a year in the span. That's because while I enjoy it, there's something about it. I think it's the religious side that doesn't quite click with me. But while it doesn't click entirely, it's not enough for me to DNF the series. So I do intend to continue it. Maybe not next year. I know Tanner Dew has a new book coming out. So if I end up reading a Tanner Dew next year, it would not be this one. But if I read more than one, then I might. Next up, Southern Reach Trilogy. This was one I really wanted to complete this year. I reread the first book, and I think if I wasn't going through one of my reading slogs, I may have actually read all 3 books like I intended to back in August or September. They're such weird sci-fi fiction, and I really love the world building that Jeff Vandermeer is creating in his works. And I want to read more of him, but he's one of those authors who, because it's so rich in its weird sci-fi, it's not always the easiest to follow, which is why I wanted to reread it and read them all at once. I didn't do that. I don't think I'm going to reread the first one again when I do get to book 2, so which is probably why I'm very likely to get to it in 2023. I don't want it to leave my head too quickly, so I really want to return to the series in this next year. Eventually read more Jeff Vandermeer. I really am intrigued by his works, and I haven't picked up other ones because I'm still on this one, and I feel like I can't get invested in his other works until I finish this series, and I really do want to. It's just kind of overwhelming, to be honest. Next up, Murderbot Diaries. I read the 6th book this month, actually, December, and that came out last year, 2021. There's not a new one this year, but I saw on Goodreads that there seems to be an expected publication in 2023. If that comes to fruition, I will continue it, almost certainly, when it comes out. If it doesn't, then of course I'll have to wait. The Up and Under, I will certainly pick this up. I pick this up every year that it comes out. This is a spin-off series from Middle Game. It is more effective, I think, than the Seasonal Fears. And after book 3, which I have absolutely adored for reasons I've talked about already in my wrap-up of that month, I'm going to continue it for sure when it comes out. If you're not familiar with this, it's just an allegory for what's going on in Middle Game, following these two children, Zib and I forget the other one's names. But basically, one's rigid and like all proper and the other one's all sort of whimsy and all over the place. And they have two clashing personalities as they learn and they grow on this journey through this fantastical Wizard of Oz-esque world. Next up, the Lake Witch trilogy. I'm almost certainly going to pick this next book, which is Don't Fear the Reaper. I intentionally read My Heart is a Chainsaw this year because I wanted to be prepared for Don't Fear the Reaper, which I was expecting to come out in 2022. It apparently got pushed back, which I guess it works out considering now that I'm ready to read it when it does come out. This is a series about a teenage girl who is convinced there is a slasher film or slasher going on in her town because of her background in horror films. And so she's very much obsessed with horror films, so she's convinced this stuff's going on. But she also seems to have some unaddressed trauma that may be impacting her mental health. And there's this clash between what's going on there and here. I think there is some resolution on that idea in book 1, but it's still going to be an ongoing idea, I believe, based off how it concluded in the next books. Next up is the Wayward Children series. I say almost certainly. This is the most certain, absolute certain. I will always and forever continue the series for the foreseeable future, and I've talked about in my 5-star prediction list. Okay, sorry, my phone was crashing there. Thankfully, this time I actually caught it as it was crashing. Where were we? We went in the final 5 series that I want to read in 2023. My top 5 series to be read in 2023. These are all series that I either am continuing that I didn't read at all in 2022 or that I'm starting completely from the start. And I'm going to start with the ones that I'm continuing. Actually, I'm going to start with the honorable mention here, the Martian Contingency, which is the 4th book of the Lady Astronaut series. It's supposed to be coming out in 2023, but I've heard no actual advertisements that it is coming out. So that's one that I can't say I'm going to continue because I don't know it's actually coming out. But that said, the 5, I'm cheating here, I gave you 6, but 5 are going to be The Broken Earth. I read the first 2 books. I don't think I read them this year, but I know I started to read the first 2. I want to say it was 2021, and I was trying to do what I did with the other ones, and sort of just read them all at once. And I knew I'm going to have to reread them probably for book 3 if I really want to enjoy it, but I haven't decided what I'm going to do there. But I really, really, really want to prioritize The Broken Earth because I went an entire year without reading it, and I want to finish this series. I'm so close, book 3. But like I said, it's one of those series, kind of like Jeff Vandermeer, where I feel as if I'm going to have to reread the first 2 completely to really make sure I'm following along with all the details of what's going on, because her world building is so rich in N.K. Jemisin's series. Then there's the Stormlight Archives, another one that I started in 2021 but didn't continue. This one I've only read book 1, and I absolutely will have to reread book 1, but it was enjoyable, and I think just knowing what I know now going into it, I'll enjoy it more because I'm more familiar with the characters and I'll be able to follow along better. And if I can't, I'll have to seriously consider whether I really want to finish the series, because it's one of those things where the threshold to entrance is so high, but it's one of those worlds that are just so rich and so highly loved that I know I would fall in love if I can just get past that first threshold of, the threshold of entrance, that barrier, that cost of entry that comes with massive series like these. If I can get past that, I know I can love it, and I want to be a part of the community that loves Stormlight Archive. I really do. And then Hitchhiker's Guide. This is one that I read, I don't know when, it was so long ago, but I need to reread book 1 so I can continue the full series. I do want to finish it just so I can say it's one of those classic series that I've heard it's actually a solid series. So I really want to continue that series. I think I said that last year, but I'm committing to it in the top 5 this year for 2023. Then finally, The Expanse, one I haven't read at all that I want to start. I have not watched the show because I want to get into this. I love politics, I love space, I literally study space, planetary science. So it makes sense. The series that I understand should be set in space, in the planets, and different politics across the planets. It's should be made for me. So everything about it should be perfect for me as a reader. And I just have to get into it. It's one of those giant commitments that I'm afraid to get into, but I am close to having it granted on Libby, so I'm pretty sure next year I'm gonna commit to starting it. Okay, and then finally, The Wayfarers, and this last one I'm probably the least least excited about. I really want to read A Long Way to the Angry Planet or whatever, because I've heard great things. I think I'm gonna like it. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about the series. I'll be committed to the entire series worth. But as a standalone, I feel like what I've heard about it, which just seems like a fun space opera, in the same air as I think The Hitchhiker's Guide, as absurdism. I definitely want to start it. Whether or not I continue after book 1, I guess we'll see. I just don't know enough about it yet to commit to it like that. But those are all the series that I've been reading and plan on reading for 2023. Let me know your thoughts. I know There's so many series here, some that are obviously more popular than others. But either way, I'm excited for them. I always love reviewing the series that I've been reading, even though it's kind of a lot to sort of try and think about. You dare. As always, thanks again for stopping by for my 13 days of Vlogmas, aka 13 days of Josh. As always, I'll be back tomorrow for another day of this, and hope you all stay safe, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.